for joining us. I don't know how you all feel, but it's like mile 25 of a marathon, right? We are close. The end is in sight. The finish line gets you an aircraft carrier for whatever your heart's desire and what you're planning to do. So thank you so much for coming, listening. There are actually more people than I was expecting, so this is great. My name is Nolan. I work for the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I was fortunate enough about a year ago to be asked to create or build out our FinOps practice. I have spent about 12 years at CME at this point, so for me it was a great opportunity to be a part of this community and learn some new things. We're going to spend probably 20-25 minutes kind of talking to you guys about what our journey is, how we've done it, the different ways we've approached it, what's worked well, what hasn't. And then we want to open it up to questions. We have been very fortunate that we started FinOps in the beginning. We recognize many of you in the room probably have not had that same opportunity. And so, we always had executive buy-in, right? So we're lucky. Now it's ironic that we're supposed to talk about how you get that, but I can definitely talk to you about, the influence and the importance of getting that as soon as you can. You clearly all believe in the FinOps community, that's why you're here, but making sure you have that executive support will help drive the cultural change, help drive the practices you want to instill within your organization, and in my humble opinion, lead to a more effective practice. But I will pause as my colleague Jonathan Morley is going to talk to you just a little bit about CME, just so you understand where we are, who we are, and then we'll get into our FinOps journey.
Thanks, Leslie. The conference last year was incredible, and I'm blown away to see not only how much this has grown, but also to see some familiar faces, to have some new faces and new conversations in our life, and I'm really grateful to be here. My name is Jonathan Morley. I'm formerly IT cost optimization at CME. I've been there for about 13 years at this point. 10 of those years were spent as a software engineer, and 3 of those have been more on the finance side, dealing with cloud costs, forecasting, cost estimations, and now we talk about things like labeling and cost recommendations. I'm thrilled to be here, really excited to tell you a little bit more about CME Group. I'll give you a second to read the words on the slide. There are quite a few of them. But I'll give you the 2-minute intro. CME's got over 100 years of history, a $65 billion market capitalization, and we really provide a marketplace for risk management. So our customers come to us, CME Globex, as a matching engine. We have a clearinghouse function for counterparty risk, and our bread and butter is futures and options across many, many different asset classes. What drew me to CME Group 13 years ago as a technologist was scale. We have some really interesting technical challenges. For example, while we've been at the conference today, we facilitated 23 million trades on our exchange. That exchange is 24 hours a day, nearly 7 days a week, and only closes for a very, very, very small maintenance window over the weekend. Massive scale comes in terms of size as well. We all can appreciate, for the folks in the room, how big this conference room venue is. As a numbers person, I looked it up. It's 270,000 square feet. Our data center is just shy of 500,000 square feet. So think this conference space doubled, filled with machines, all facilitating risk management 24 hours a day. We recently signed a 10-year partnership with Google Cloud to migrate all of our applications, all of our infrastructure to the cloud. And Leslie's going to tell you a bit more about how she started the team that's making the FinOps side of that practice happen.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. So one of the important things that I think we did from the start was we identified what I would call the challenges and the risks of the cloud, right? And you've heard a lot about it, but with a finance background, it's terrifying to think of how the decentralized expense management was soon going to be in the hands of every developer, everyone, right? Like that's been the message. Everyone owns FinOps. But when you're used to being able to set a budget as a publicly traded company, and now it's among the masses, right? So we were like, okay, big, risky, scary, right?
I call it a free-for-all.
Yeah. Variable expense, same thing. It's no longer like, here's your capital budget, spend against it, but it's a set number. You know what that number is, you're good to go. Earlier this morning, I had the opportunity to serve on a panel with Deloitte, who's also been a partner of ours, and forecasting, right? I mean, you're forecasting, it's variable, it changes every minute, every day, every week, every month. And if you're using your same processes from a financial perspective that like at the end of the month, books close, you look back on it, you've already missed all the opportunities, right? And I think we've learned and we've seen a lot of that. And then lastly, The beauty of the cloud is that anyone can access it. People can get sandbox stood up. That's where the innovation happens. It's where Gen AI, everyone wants to talk about it. But again, scary, terrifying, right? Lots of expense. And as a finance person, we like that control. We want to be able to help you manage it. So it is definitely a cultural change for CME. And so, how we gain momentum, right, as the slide would say, is FinOps was there from the beginning. It was actually a pillar within our migration. So we had 6 pillars, some were just the app migration, communications was in there, a cloud operating model. But with our advisors, Google and Deloitte specifically, they were, oh, he's leaving.
I'll be right back.
Okay. They were fantastic in the sense of pointing to the importance of FinOps in the beginning. And that, again, you're going to hear me say that over and over again, FinOps from the beginning, from the start. It is a little weird for me to talk about the fact that I was asked to lead this practice. I guess I would be considered a change influencer. You probably could ask Jonathan about that over myself. But I came in without a FinOps background, without a technology background, to kind of be a neutral party, right? Because that was what was so important, is coming in from the outside, put together a team. We did create a new team. We also, from backgrounds in both IT and finance, which I think is critically important.
I advanced to talk about our new team. I'll go back one.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
We talked about experts to accelerate, and then we had a vision and a strategy. And that vision and strategy were how we were trying to overcome the risks and the challenges of the cloud. Please move ahead. Thank you. We work very closely together, if you guys haven't noticed. And we're at the end. We're running, right? We crawl most days, but we're running right now. So what we did launch, so that everyone could have a voice at the table, and that we could create that collaboration, that communication, that visibility that is so important to the FinOps culture, we have a shared responsibility model. And I'm really proud of this. And I do think it is, so where you see transformation and execution, kind of think of that as the business. So it is 100% shared between business, finance, and technology. Our vision is up there, right? So it's to ensure that we have accountability, visibility. We're trying to have transparency. Like every buzzword you guys have heard over the last, call it 72 hours, is listed in our vision and strategy. Structure, we do have a governance and steering committee. Talk a little bit about that. Maybe it was, yesterday I talked about that. Happy to go into more details how we set that up. And then what is success, right? Success is the easy one. What are defined financial requirements? Now, how do you define them? Good question, and we're still working on that. But this is how we put it together, and this is what we've done. So, and we did have our senior executives. So before I moved into the role, the CFO, the CIO, and the Chief Transformation Officer, I was a part of that process. They absolutely agreed with what the job description is, what they were looking for, and we escalate to all 3 people, right? So that's where the executives are there, a part of our major decisions and our escalations. And then lastly, and then I'll let Jonathan do some talking since he came back to the stage, where have we been focused and where are we going? So, I've talked a little bit about operating model, tooling, and forecasting. And so what you have up here on the slide, and I'll let Jonathan kind of dig into the details because he actually does the work, right? I'm just, I was kind of a pretty face, but he's probably the pretty face too, so I'm not sure what I am right now, but anyways, but yeah, so operating model, tooling, forecasting, focus. Jonathan, what do you have to add?
Yeah, and really the concepts on this slide are the minimum set that we think we needed to get off the ground. And I love the crawl, walk, run model that FinOps pushes really, really hard, because I think a lot of you, and certainly we, are doing this already without calling it those buckets. When you think about things like labeling, when you're labeling your workloads or tagging your resources, a lot of us probably crawl already because we have some version of labeling available on those resources. When you start to think about remediation in a proactive or a reactive way, what do you do when labels are missing? Okay, that's something that starts to get you moving a little bit faster. And then on the proactive side, how do you ensure that those exist to begin with before it's even an option to have them missing? It's been really fun for our team, which is relatively small, although cross-functional, to look at how we might improve where we are to get to where we want to be. I love the message here that FinOps is a journey, because I think that's absolutely true. 3 years ago, when I was working on cloud costing, before we announced Google partnership, before we had a team that worked together on all of these different aspects, I was struggling to do all of this, and I think That's a key theme I've heard here from a lot of the presenters, is that the teams are phenomenal and everyone must collaborate and must communicate to ensure that those things are successful.
So that is...
Yeah, recognizing that we are the last thing that prevents you from leaving a breakout room. Happy to open up for questions and answers. We have plenty of time for those, and we'll field those as appropriate.
I like it. Also, I like the energy because it is not easy being the last of the day, and you acted like it wasn't the last of the day. You acted like it was like the first of the day, which is good. Not like first after you've been out too late, but like first when you really are happy, which is good. Anyways, questions. Oh, gosh, okay.
Two very excited question
very
people.
Excited questions.
Hopefully they're
You
not
are first.
My question's really
Well, hold on. I want you to speak. Oh, it's long. Are you guys ready? Do you need a chair?
As long as it's kind of a low ball.
One of your slides, you talked about picking a change influencer to sort of support that. How do you find those people? Like, is there a criteria? Do you go looking for people that you know of who are like, yeah, that person's an influencer. I'm going to pick that person.
Yes, yeah, so it's a hard question because it's me. So how would you describe, right? Maybe you can answer that question and then I'll describe why I feel, like how I guess label myself then. But you go first.
Yeah, I'm excited to see on the FinOps website, the job board. It's fun to read the job descriptions because I think a lot of times, especially in a corporate setting, those job descriptions can become relatively stale fairly quickly. Not because they're irrelevant, but because the role expands kind of naturally, and I think that that's common for FinOps. I have no idea how you were selected for this position, but I will say, as a people manager, you certainly check all of the boxes, what I would look for in terms of leadership support, in terms of executive function. I think whatever that selection process was clearly worked. I have no visibility to speak of as to what that looked like for you, but I was excited to hear that I was able to work with you, kind of being on cloud forecasting before FinOps was formal.
Yes, so I think what was, well, I'll just speak to what I think has allowed me to be successful in this role. You know, so I had the opportunity to work across a lot of different teams, right? So I had served in more of a traditional, I'll call it business development, corporate development role. I had done a lot of external facing, so I understand and I have appreciation for what the business is doing. I also worked on, we did a sizable acquisition in 2018, and I had the luxury of working on that technology integration. So I'm dangerous with technology, right? Like nobody's gonna label me as a technologist, okay, clearly. I struggle to sometimes know where my phone is. But I do know who I need to talk to when I need to get information. And I'm not afraid to admit when I don't know it, right? And I really think, you know, and that's just being a good leader, right? I mean, I'm going to stand up here and, you know, not try to hide who and what I am, but like, I think a lot of it is like, I took the FinOps exam on Tuesday, right? It was really important. I wanted to be a practitioner. Should I probably taken it before? Of course, but I wanted to say like, yeah, I'm a part of this community. So I think it's, this is exciting, right? I'm learning a ton. I'm learning a lot about technology. I've got to work with some really incredible advisors. So I think it's somebody who's motivated, excited, willing to take on, I mean, their days aren't always easy, right? And there are days where I walk in and I'm like, what is Gen AI? Can somebody just explain, like, real simple, what does this mean? Like,
One more time.
Yeah. I was like, what is this really, how is this going to affect my day-to-day activities? But, you know, but just being willing to do that, right? And so, but I do think the being neutral was important, right? So I did not come from either our FP&A group or our IT business management or, I don't even know what, a platform team. And I had the relationships to make it work. Be very right.
The other interesting piece that I've picked up on working with Leslie and calling it change influencer, the authenticity piece also comes with questions, right? I appreciate when Leslie comes to me and says, I have a question about this, how can I better understand this? Because again, as a technologist with a technology background and as a numbers person, I want to provide data. I want to be able to say, here's why we made that decision, or here's why we might make that decision. Here are some different opportunities to look at data differently. We've worked very closely with Google's PSO on looker dashboarding and showing things, KPIs and metrics in different ways, because folks like Leslie can come in and ask very good questions that frankly we've never thought of answering.
And part of it is in finance, I love data too. I just want it to equal, like always the same number. It really drives me crazy. There's always a different number. Please.
I have a short follow-up question, which is that do you think one of you is enough? Or do you wish there were more than one of you?
So interestingly enough, so we have 2 individuals, Jonathan and another colleague, that are 100% dedicated to FinOps. I probably spend 50% of my time on it. Then there's a team where we all kind of are part-time and doing different things. It goes back to the shared responsibility model. Right now, a lot of our team is, I will call it, heavy IT financial management, more of a TBM practice. Jonathan joined it, then we lean into our partners. For where we are right now in the cloud, it's probably sufficient. Jonathan may disagree with me, but I mean, there are, that's where the automation is going to become so important, just because headcount's really hard to get.
I fully expect, kind of as a short follow-up to your follow-up, that FinOps will become less centralized, and it will be part of product discussions. It will be part of sprint planning. It will be part of, once we get recommendations to a place where teams can see a number attached to those, I fully expect that'll be part of, application reviews, just like things like security become part of those reviews. So I don't know that one is enough, but I think differentiated functions embedded in those teams will be incredibly helpful. There was a second question here, and then we have another hand on my left.
I have 2 questions. So the first, in one of the slides where you talked about, the waste versus, 80%. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So is this like some kind of an assessment, some kind of financial reports that were pulled, or this is like standard industry presentations that data that you took to convince or talk to the?
Yeah, so this is just standard, I forget, it's the cloud industry landscape. I think it comes out every year. I did confirm and Google those to make sure that they were correct. But yeah, this is an industry practice. And Google had shared them with us before, but it's like Flexera, I think, is the industry report where we would get that. I mean, I think the 80%, these numbers are probably plus or minus, depending on, and also what industry you're in, but they're general statistics that I think are pretty well agreed to.
So, and then in the next slide, when you talked about establishing a new team, right, with diverse backgrounds, how hard was it to convince the executives that the backgrounds need to be diverse? And for how many people did you really get a buy-in to build the very base team before expanding it?
Yeah, so it definitely came from a push down from the CFO, right? Because we've centralized this in finance. And so I was very fortunate where there were a couple individuals within finance who we were looking to give an opportunity for, and we reached out to them. We posted jobs and we said, we're looking for this type of movement, and would you be interested in having that career progression, right? And we got very lucky there. Also, when I say diverse backgrounds, like Jonathan works very closely with us. He has a software engineering background. I was lucky enough because I think FinOps, so I would say FinOps is hopefully exciting for a lot of people, particularly in finance or even IT, that it's a newer career that I was lucky enough to get, I'll just say, some of the best and brightest at CME because they knew how important this is and they were excited about something new, right? It's very easy to, and some of the things we do within finance, it almost feels like Groundhog Day, right? It's like kind of every quarter you do the same thing, you're managing it against the budget. So FinOps is different, right? But not everyone wants different. But I was very lucky that there's a group of people that are super excited. Jonathan is one. Kevin, who is in Greece actually with his family, he's another one. And I mean, I swear, spends Friday and Saturday night looking at Looker dashboards, right? Because he's excited about the topic.
We have the data to prove that.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. What is so important is, so I wasn't given new headcount. I was asked to look among the teams that existed and the capabilities we had, and see if I could put together a team that way. Some of it is, it's hard because we haven't allowed people to give up their day jobs to always do it. So I would say that's going to be one of our challenges in the future is how do you get people to spend more and more time on the FinOps side versus some of the BAU work that we just always have to do.
Two-part question. We've heard multiple presentations on putting the data in the path of your group. So once you got the executive buy-in, how do you continue to sustain that buy-in? So what data do you put in their path? And the second question is, what is the cadence of how often do you report up to?
Sure. So I'll let you start talking about the data and what we've done with Looker dashboards.
We have, at this point, probably 24 Looker dashboards that show various aspects of costs. Of course, you have the generic cost history report, you have one by GCP service, but we also folded in labeling as part of that. So our application portfolio follows a rough hierarchy: applications, products, product lines. We have dashboards that support each of those. So in the product meetings where product owners are discussing where the applications are going or the status of migrations, they're able to pull up those dashboards and see near real-time costs, how those are trending, which services are being impacted, which environments. We've spent a ton of time catering those dashboards to the folks that are going to use them. In FinOps, they're very useful for me, but I'm not influencing those decisions in those meetings every week. I'd say that's the biggest one for us.
So to our C-suite, I would say that, so right now we meet, I made a slide about our steering. So our steering meets once a month. That is some of the executives that then would report directly to the C-suite. You know, I'm gonna be real honest, and this is a struggle for me as a finance person. I want perfection before I really want to push it out to my executives. And you know, I've heard from all of you, many of you in the room, that perfection is not something we can strive for. So you're exactly right. That is probably the next cadence. I mean, we're reporting out cloud numbers on a monthly basis to the CFO, to the CIO, right, just as part of our monthly financial packet. But we have not gotten to the point of like pushing out our dashboards. It is though, because, you know, going back to the one slide, because we are a pillar in the migration, we do give that same update, just like the whole migration team is giving it, and our dashboards are available. I just don't know how well people know that, because it's kind of buried a little bit right now. But that is clearly, you know, the next step in our evolution is just having the confidence in what we've built and what we're doing to share it, regardless, you know, that it's not perfect. But, you know, that is something we have to work on.
As someone in and out with those dashboards very frequently, I find that a lot of the dashboard questions that come to me have bubbled up through management because of things that we've done internally to increase awareness. So for example, we have a monthly lunch and learn where we talk through Looker dashboards and how you might interpret costs. We go through hypothetical scenarios. If I'm looking at application X, how do I see costs? If I see this trend, how do I explore and dig a little bit deeper? A lot of the questions that I get frequently are from folks that have found a dashboard through someone else who said they should look at it, and they want to know how they can better utilize the information because they're seeing value in it and they have more questions.
Any other questions?
That's okay.
Oh.
What? We're gonna do
hands
one.
are
We're
up.
only gonna do one more because I just got messages as we're doing this. There's a very special video we need to watch from JR after you're done.
Okay.
So don't anybody go where. But let's get this one other question here.
Look like we had two hands up. If
Yeah,
there are
it
two
looks like we
partners,
have
we
time.
probably
I know,
can't
just
do
checking
two.
time. We have time for two, so we're
Okay.
good.
Just curious about KPIs from a crawl, walk, run perspective. Our job is never done. What's your approach to setting objectives, OKRs, KPIs for yourself as a team? Like in terms of annual performance, like how do you define what you want to achieve for the year? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say we definitely need to evolve this year as, and I can speak to the folks that, so our performance process is directly based on if you're a manager of these individuals, right? So in their goals and performance, it was definitely built in. The KPIs actually that are on our Looker dashboards that we are managing as like a FinOps is around labeling, is around just like a variance to forecast and the budget.
Yeah, compliance is always interesting, how much has been labeled that needs to be labeled, and
We're
that
also
speaks to the
tracking how many
reactive.
people are trained, certified. So again, that needs to become a part of, I'll just say how many people, you know, training, what does training mean, right? So we debate the population to have the good metrics, but we are at the crawl stage there, but recognize the importance of it.
So having come so far in the journey, what do you see as the next biggest challenge for executive buy-in?
I would say, so the real question becomes, you know, what is the information that, right? So it's going to take us some time to like be able to put out dashboards that said, we saved $1 million this week by doing right size and some of like the core principles of what makes FinOps. So how do we keep FinOps relevant in their minds? Now there's a part of me that says, I don't know if I want them to think about FinOps every day because that may mean we're a problem, right? But in the same sense, like how do you make FinOps a part of like the success, right? So Jonathan is doing an amazing job. Part of my job is to make sure people know that, recognize them for it, so for us it'll be the early wins and so that they can see what we're trying to do. Sometimes it works. I would say it's also about how to be agile, so getting that feedback to be like, we gotta do it differently, or this meeting isn't working out, or we have 2 meetings, right? I am very fortunate that I would say I have a very good feedback loop with the CFO and the CIO, but like, how do I get my whole team to have that same feedback loop? I would say is really where we need to focus.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, folks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your attention.
Right, you guys,
Congratulations.
Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you, John. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.